Thanks, you guys. Thank you. Thank you again for coming. I'll go ahead and say we're very, very beginning. So it's different. Dear God, we're so grateful for another day that we can join together as faculty and students and to reflect on questions to do our best to integrate the tools and gifts that given us through technology and find ways to enhance and improve patient care and improve our productivity and the way we do work for the mission and calming place of our lives. And pray that we'll lead our discussion and as we contemplate and think about AI and the tools that are out there, maybe use it for your honor, glory, and prayer this evening. Amen. Well, I wanted to first of all start by maybe passing the mic around to each one of you and then maybe giving a little bit of an introduction about yourself and then your background, what you're studying, what you're working in, and maybe you can talk about why you love our AI. Thank you, Dave. If not, you can skip that part. But maybe I'll start with Dr. Thompson and then we'll go down all the way there.
Dr. Thompson.
Why is our
Yeah,
Yeah, Calvin Thompson. I teach in the School of Religion, but it primarily means I teach across all the schools. Very little of what I teach is actually for people majoring in religion. I teach for physicians, nurses, PT, OT, RT, PA, pharmacy, pretty much across the different professions. And I've been fascinated in the way that just to try to learn everything I could about how is AI actually used in this particular profession. Also what its limitations are, when you can trust it and you can't, and also just such things as when you're working with a patient, many of the patients now have already checked out their disease or their pain or their illness, real or imagined, on AI, and they're sometimes actually trying to evaluate their provider on how well the provider matches up with what they've already read. And sometimes one of the major challenges is to work with patients to help them, both embrace what they've learned that's helpful, but also to sometimes question it. And one of the things I've also spent a lot of time on is trying to understand the phenomenon of AI slop. In other words, we're building these massive data centers, but they're kind of feeding on themselves. And so when is new information actually being introduced into the system, and when is it simply feeding on itself and regurgitating problematic information that's just kind of been festering there, the cesspool?
Hi, I'm Kristen Stagg. I am working on my PhD at the School of Nursing. I have come up through undergrad at School of Nursing, master's in informatics at School of Allied Health, so I've kind of bounced around Loma Linda a bit. I am focusing on big data analytics in nursing, and I got really excited about the AI Heal Club when I first saw the poster because it feeds into big data. It also feeds into data in general. Speaking to what you were saying, I'm a big believer in the junk in is junk out. So you need very, very careful parameters, whether that's data, and this feeds back into for the patients. We talk a lot about health literacy, and now we need AI literacy, and specifically health AI literacy. And so we're just building on these concepts and trying to coordinate those efforts. I was really excited to see that coming together of this is for all of the schools. We want to actually work on this together and not keep siloing ourselves.
I'm Mary Jane from the School of Behavioral Health. I'm a fifth-year PhD student in systems, families, and couples. And I also teach master students as adjunct faculty. And also in my prior life, I am a retired CPA, and I have been an auditor for like 30 years, doing compliance, financial, and IT audits. So it's very interesting to see how AI has evolved, and it reminds me a lot of the issues that we have dealt with in my prior life, like governance, privacy, security, and also a lot. I remember when I did one audit on PII, um, personally identifiable information, and at the County of San Diego back then. And then when I first look at the regulations, it says that data that are stored, that are transmitted, in transit, collected, and disposed. And so I was overwhelmed. So that's everything. And everything is sensitive. So I asked my boss, so where do I even start? And then so we have to limit the scope to like social security number. And then we only look at some key systems. So when I now think about AI, it's such a big, it touches all areas. And so a lot of these issues are going to come up in the same way because the technology has grown and moved so quickly. So regulations and compliance cannot keep up with. So what do we do with it? So there are lots of issues around AI that I'm interested in, and also how it affects people's mental health, behavioral health, and biopsychosocial, spiritual well-being. So it's a very interesting topic, and I'm glad to be invited to this panel. And by the way, I'm the vice president of the AI Field Club. And for the people who sit in the back, now you can eat the food. I think all the members are here already, and I order extra food. So help yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Jan Nick, Dr. Nick, from the School of Nursing. I argued for an informatics course in our undergraduate program for years, and then we started it. I loved teaching it. And then when I transitioned over to director of the PhD program, and so Kristen is my student, we're doing a lot of projects together. But I then argued for a big data analytics, looking at the directions our professional organizations are asking for these competencies. We need those, but part of that is using AI. I'm a big proponent for AI and using it in the research application as opposed to the clinical application. So I look forward to talking more about that aspect with you all. And in our big data analytics, one of our modules is on using AI to be able to predict the future. So based on patterns that we give it in big data, come up with a predictive pattern that for the future so that we can move our resources and allocate resources more appropriately. So I guess that could be the clinical application for that. But thank you guys for coming. This is exciting.
Thank you, Dr. Beck. My name is Debbie Kamada from the School of Allied Health, and I'm the academic chair over HEMA. And in that department, we have a master's in health informatics, from which Christy graduated, and I started her interest, and from which the Harsh graduated, and Monica, there you go, graduating this June. So that program started we opened it in 2013. It's changed quite a bit, and as we're going to be experiencing another curriculum change coming this fall, and adding more machine learning, data analytics. So we've been doing it a long time. And I would actually go so far as to say I've been doing the grassroots informatics probably longer than some of you have been alive. When I was in the hospitals, I was, my title was Director of Medical Information Systems. And so I had HIM department, I had utilization review and all the case reviewers, case managers, the nurse managers, social work. And so we did a lot of drug utilization reviews, and we did a lot of profiling of all of our top diagnoses and top procedures. And So we were doing it a long time ago, and we were doing it with Lotus 1, 2, 3. That's how. And I started it years and years ago, and it's always been a fascination with me about how we can use data to really impact patients' lives. And as I started teaching the intro in the health informatics course over since 2013, and just seeing the book literature change and how the whole world of the informatics profession is changing by day and becoming in its own right this massive sub-profession for every person working in the healthcare industry, I think is very, very exciting. I'm also working with a team of students right now in some of we have Dr. Harris, we have Fred Armstrong, Harsh is one of our leaders, and Monica, she keeps running on me, there she is. Before the very unfortunate passing of our chief information officer on the medical center side, and some of you know Mark Zirkelbach, he approached me and said, I really need help developing an AI governance strategy for LLUH. And he was working with Dr. Harris as well. And he goes, do you think some of the students would want to do this? And so right now we also have a group of students that Saharsh is really moving out for us, which we appreciate, working to try to develop a very broad scoped governance structure for, and we're not calling it AI, and maybe we'll get to this later, so why not? But it was Mark Zuckerberg's wish that we change that to advanced technologies, because really AI is advanced technology. So I have the pleasure of kind of coordinating that work that's going on the campus as well. So that is why asked me to be here. And so hopefully I have some words of wisdom to share with you, or not, you can share with me.
I am Jeremiah John. I'm a student of school medicine. I'm also part of the AI Global Fund. I'm interested in, well, I have been interested in building computational tools for medicine and see, and that's what my background. But specifically in this current state of AI, I think it's useful for us in the healthcare space because we know what problems we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis versus the people who are in the past building the tools for us are on the outside and might not know exactly what we're going through. And so we're uniquely positioned to build these tools, and with AI agents, I think it's lower the bar for a lot of people from having to have a computational degree to just being able to define the problem, explain it to the agent, and be able to iterate for building some of the solutions for ourselves. And so that further is quite interesting in the blog was to help students sort of realize that for themselves and get some familiarity so the general tools to build the solutions for their problem.
Wonderful, yeah, thank you for that. That was really nice hearing each of your background and interests as well. And so I'm going to go into a couple of questions, and also if the audience has any questions, you can feel free to raise your hand or grab your mic. But my first question essentially revolves around what skills in AI do you think students or faculty should start looking into and exploring, especially in relation to their discipline and their subject area of focus? And how much of it do you think would be useful or how much is not useful? And so just kind of trying to engage your thoughts on what skill sets should we have, or how should we go about engaging AI in our own discipline subject area?
Yeah.
Well, okay, I guess I'll start. To the depth that I think people need to understand it, really depends on what they're doing. But I believe everybody has to have some basic understanding. I can't think of anyone who doesn't have to have some basic understanding. I think that understanding has to be, what tool are you using? And what is that tool capable of doing? I'm getting very concerned about people grabbing tools and using tools and not understanding what the tool can do and what has been the validation on that tool. And I'll give you a really fun example from myself. And I'm a very much an advocate of AI. At my own ChatGPT, I like using it for various things to make my life easier, quicker. But we were getting ready to have a Christmas celebration for some of our AS students. And we're like, oh, we need some games. So I'm like, I have an idea. We'll just ask ChatGPT to make us a word scramble with holiday words. Well, by the grace of God, we ran out of time and couldn't do it. So I had all this stack of paintings. And this was my first experience with ChatGPT, and I have a paid version, it's not the free one. It was hallucinating. And the words were not accurate. So I think people have to use it enough to know what they're consuming. And then make sure that they have validated the tool that they're using. And I know the university has a company, and we're gonna talk about that also, I can't remember the name of the company, what's its name that we're working with?
Sorry.
So, is that, yeah, so, anyways, there's a company that, no, this is actually a company that, we have a contract with through IS that vets different AI tools that they're being embedded into the EHRs, right? Because it's really important that you have to vet them and make sure that they're reliable, they're not showing bias, and I think that you have to have some level of understanding. You can't just be using any tool for any reason. I can't remember the companies, but, and I think that's what we're looking at, some of the governance structures, that people have to know what are the limitations and what are the good things about it, and that, but to do so wisely. Does that make sense? So I've converted a lot of my assignments and courses I do teach, forcing students to go and pull some stuff from AI and asking them to do it and then critique it and find what was right and find what was wrong. I think those are some tools that we need to start right away with not just students, but our workers and our workforce as well, because I'm very concerned that people are adding stuff to their phones.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to comment on that also about the use of AI. I would be concerned if a student is not using AI, because that's part of our life now. It's not going away. We integrate it and we learn how to integrate it correctly. The tool that students, the position I take is you need to know how to prompt it. What are the prompts so that you get the most accurate information from your AI? For example, you have to give it the level of the student, give it the population, the question. And I have several assignments also, and I encourage the other faculty in the PhD program, give them assignments, have them go in, evaluate it, reflect on it. How was it accurate or not? Now, as far as the hallucination goes, if you think AI is the only thing that hallucinates, you're incorrect, because you talk to people, what do you think? Give me this information. I don't know about it. They come up with all sorts of things. So people hallucinate also. So I tend to not use that word hallucination. It's just incorrect. You know, back in the 2000, when the Institute of Medicine began to really evaluate our practice based on evidence, and found that only 20% of our practice was based on evidence. And the other was just by, oh, I think it's logical. Well, it's only logical. This would be the best practice. That's not the way it is anymore. So you need to know how to prompt it. The more information you give it, when you ask your question, the more accurate it will be when you do it. Now, I wanted to introduce the concept of some journal editors wrote an article about how to cite when you use AI. And they said what type it is, what version it is, how you use it. And then at the last part, you state that you take full responsibility for the content of this assignment or this manuscript. Every manuscript now that I submit, I have a declaration on the use of AI. So we put it in our PhD handbook that we just recently revised. So it says, and it says you can adapt this to either an assignment or a manuscript. The authors acknowledge the use of AI, artificial intelligence, and then I state what version. I use ChatGPT 2, but I use the free version. Sorry about that. For clarification of specific points. So I use it for tutoring of myself when I'm asking, please clarify this. Alternate word suggestions. I know a sentence is inelegant or it's slightly confusing, so I'll put it in. I write it, put it in. Please make it more elegant. And it's amazing, just immediately. Well, of course it should have been that way. So I use it for alternate word suggestions and grammatical refinement. However, all the original ideas were mine. So all the original ideas, intellectual contributions, and the complete development of the manuscript was solely the work of the authors. The authors assume responsibility of all included content. So you hear that over and over again. You gotta make sure that the content is there. So ChatGPT got a bad rap for references that they hallucinated, they made up. Last year, I hear from students, I haven't tried it. I don't look for references using AI. I use Google Scholar, it's a type of AI, but it gives me just as much information. I use EndNote to do searching also. So I haven't used it for citations. There's one AI that I still need to use. So raise your hand if you used it, and that is SciSpace. Raise your hand. Anybody? And okay, you have. Look into SciSpace because it can say, I don't understand this content. Can you give me a brief history and current status of it? Boom, it will do that with all the current active citations. So check that out, SciSpace, as well as your favorite AI. Thank you so much. Keep using it, use it more and more. And document how and take full responsibility for the content so that if you did copy, if you didn't verify the content, then the teachers can come back and say, well, look, this is incorrect. And then you discuss the repercussions of that.
You always love it. The fact that those to use it more and
Absolutely. I can't live without it.
I think for clinicians, they are a really good tool for psychoeducation. There are lots of resources that we can provide to the clients about what they can do at home, what kind of interventions, homework they can do after they see us for an hour. So I think it will be a very good tool to use for that purpose.
Yeah, I, for a long time was concerned because so many of my colleagues were so obsessed with the question of, is using AI cheating? And I'm old enough to remember all the different things that got asked about. I first started studying statistics when the purists thought we ought to all use slide rules. And we bought electronic calculators, and there was a big concern, oh, maybe that's cheating. My first dissertation, I used an IBM selectric typewriter with a little white correcting tape and the little ball inside, and then people would think, well, computers, you know, what about that? So I can go through all these different eras and say that you're cheating yourself if you don't learn to use the modern technology well. So my big passion is to have students actually use it well. And one of my other big words is to use it with good adult supervision. And so part of what I try to teach is how to do good adult supervision with the AI that you get. In other words, what will it do? What won't it do? When you need to critique it. My daughter's an attorney in New York City, is an intellectual property attorney, and she has to look at all her cases on AI. And she says that it's still, and this is, you know, a few weeks ago, she was out here. So it still comes up with cases that do not exist. She does it also with some of the cases where it does cite, where there's an actual case. She says she continually has to go back, check it out, because the cases they cite, they don't always draw from that actual case, what the case actually said. So it's useful because it gives her a lot of things to look at, but if she doesn't look at them carefully on her own, it may come up with some weird things. One little fun thing I do with my students sometimes is with names. I say, okay, you know, Karen. You fed Karen into AI. What kind of picture would you get? And it's a common name, but when it's used kind of as a meme, you know, you all know it means somebody who, like a middle-aged, relatively wealthy, suburban white woman who's saying, take me to your manager. But when it's used as a meme, that's comes to the surface enough that AI will tend to repeat things that are used commonly as jokes, as memes, whatever, and, you know, teach students to realize that it's often just picking up what is most common. Or when something is used in a special way or something, and so you have to learn how to dig beneath that to find out what is the truth behind it.
So as I'm looking at this, I'm at a fun little crossroads of I teach or mentor within the undergraduate of nursing. I work as a clinician in the OR, and I'm a PhD student. I've also worked as an EHR analyst and a nurse informaticist. So as I look at this, my big takeaway is the responsibility of those who are bringing it and those who are receiving it for coordination and communication. Because we do have, it's amazing what we have. But if any of you have been to conferences in the last 5 years, AI booths have popped up everywhere and everyone wants to tag that on. And it's, what do you mean by that? When I go there and ask, like, why are you saying your company is AI? Because as someone who's had to do implementations, I let people know like, oh, your charting got better or worse because of me, and I'm sorry, and you're welcome. And with that though, it's sometimes I have to remind people that, especially as an informaticist, it's not just messing with your charting or giving you the new tool. There is a huge component of adult education. And then when you're thinking about the clinicians that you're bringing it to, I'm tired, I don't want one more new thing, not today, maybe tomorrow, or for some people, never. You have to be careful whether you're in the C-suite bringing it in or whether you're the person receiving it, the new clinician just out of school, or the new non-healthcare provider who's bringing this into our hospitals and clinics and our education. Because without that communication, that's why we spend sometimes so much money and projects just fall by the wayside. So getting that buy-in and that understanding of what is it, what is the purpose, and let's do this together, because I think that's where we're running into some issues. But I also have seen some of that succeed when it's done well. So that's just a little touch of my experience.
Wonderful. So actually for the next question, I was thinking of getting your thoughts on what support do you think we should have as the university or healthcare institution as well for AI related projects within your school or department, and what would you like to see essentially done as a university in terms of taking steps to integrate AI within our space? So essentially, what do you think we should do as an institution, where we're at currently, and maybe where you'd like us to go with the use of AI?
Yeah, I think school could benefit from maybe building some of the models onto our own computers. Yeah, I think it's harder to use some of the corporate provided models on their own cloud platforms and deal with the regulation around that. I think if we have more control over the weights of these models ourselves, if we can play around with internal data on hardware, I think that we could enter a space where we innovate new solutions rather quickly. And I think part of that first step is to build some of this hardware on our own instead of relying on the industry to resource us.
I think Dr. Harris left, but we actually have a team as well, right? That Dr. Harris has put together where they're essentially trying to build local models, and hopefully we'll have maybe more information that will come out soon on that. But yeah, the thoughts.
I would like to see some kind of not quite user training, but you know how we got newsletters of some IT security tips, how to spot for scams. So I think if we can have some kind of awareness for everyone, so everyone is aware of some basics of AI, like how can I write a better prompt so I can get the results that I want. I think I heard different people talk about that, but how do we actually do that? So I think it would be good for the professionals, IT department to draft some kind of tips and just incorporate that into maybe some in the canvas announcement, just a short one, tips of the week, or in the newsletter, the monthly newsletter. So everyone will be all up to the same levels, the very basic level.
I would love to see interdisciplinary research because other institutions, universities, or medical centers or the combos have done that. And I would love to see it because I think when you have so many perspectives like we do, you got to have more conversations. Because again, as I was going back to like when you're just throwing tech, because again, you can just stamp it AI and it's, does that mean the language models? Or are we like, what are we don't always know whether we're clinicians, students, or other, what's happening in the background of when you say, oh, do you use AI? And people say, oh, no, like, well, maybe you don't use chat or Gemini or Grok, Cloud, whichever one you want to. That's one piece, but what applications do you run on your phone? Or again, are you starting to use some of those to code? Are you designing software, websites? What have you used? And so I think if you have more of that, the interdisciplinary of where we're actually at, we could kind of hopefully figure that out.
And yeah, I was actually I'm not sure if many of you have participated in the homecoming events, but they have specific, I think, sessions where I think they call it IP, interprofessional education. And actually one of the first events they had on Thursday was focused on AI. And it was really beautiful, and one of our dentists who's just kind of championing that area actually was excited also about our drug and they're thinking about ways we can have more interprofessional engagement and collaboration with research and integration of AI. And so hopefully we'll have her also in our next meeting. Any other thoughts about Lucille? Now I'll go into any questions maybe from the audience. Anyone has a burning question? At the back there. So I was thinking of also asking, because we're here at Roman and we have a very specific mission and vision, and also when you were mentioned about reaching your thoughts, I also remembered what Mark said. He really emphasized a lot about the people and process. And we might have the tech and tools, but it's also about the people and process. And so as an institution, what do you think we can do? Because we have a very specific mission and vision over here. But what makes it different for us when we use AI that aligns with our vision? Do you have any thoughts about the use of AI with, emphasizing and growing our mission? Or maybe sort of like a stop. That's your field of expertise.
Okay, couple things. I've spent quite a bit of time trying to understand the job futures. I'm much better at understanding for each profession what the future will look like. Not that we know, but I mean, at least the questions asked. Then I ended up using some of the specific things myself. I have to tell my students, I said, I'm old, there's a few things that those of us who've been around a few years have learned, a few things that are harder for us as we get older. But I spend a lot of time on, for each profession, what is the projected ways will be used, but also even some of the ethical and moral issues that might be raised by that. I mean, there's all kinds of things, whether it's confidentiality, whether it's just the way it will affect which jobs will be lost, which jobs will be gained, how will jobs be lost and gained. A lot of people are really worried. They say, well, my job will be phased out. Well, the big way your job might be phased out is because companies are investing all their money in AI and not in jobs. And so it isn't necessarily the specific job, it's what the company is doing when they're investing all their money in AI, maybe sometimes more than AI might even be useful. And I came up with this, it says it's sometime in the future that Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Sam Altman have joined forces on a new venture called Energy. It's a global chain of gyms designed to harness the energy of all the unemployed as they exercise on machines. The generated electricity feeds the AI servers and put them out of a job. Think Planet Fitness meets the Matrix, but without living in a simulation. And then it says the gym is designed to feed on human sweat. And it says it's a great business model because all the people who have no meaning in life because they've lost their jobs now have meaning in their life, generating electricity to feed all those data centers. And the data centers are all doing well. By the way, that's a big ethical question as well, because Sam Altman talked about the fact that, okay, data centers will soon be using more energy than the whole airline business. But he says it's worth it because he says, like, as parents, you know, you put a lot in feeding your kids, you want to get anything back. He says in 20 years, maybe we'll all get it back. But there's a lot of short-sighted thinking in some of the ethical issues that AI raises. You know, what it displaces, how it's impacting jobs, um, even the anxiety factor. Lots of people, even who have secure jobs, um, there's a name for just the anxiety that people go through when they're wondering what will happen to my job. So looking at job futures, not just in terms of what will you be doing with your job, what kinds of jobs will be replaced, but also why they might be replaced rather than just to taking over your job itself. You know, how AI is impacting society at large, how it's kind of impacting the larger fabric of economics, of job work, that kind of thing. That's one of my big concerns.
To answer your question specifically about how does AI help us achieve our mission here at the Loma Linda to continue the teaching and healing ministry of Jesus Christ. We are healers. We heal their physical, their mental, their spiritual, relational. All the different schools here is such a beautiful combination. But the reason I love it so much is because as an efficiency modeler, I love the efficiency of using AI. It helps us become more efficient. For example, with coding, I remember when I was in my PhD school, program, I took a coding class and I just work on it for hours trying to achieve the end result, the outcome that the faculty asked me to. And I'd be partway and it would stop and hang up and I had done something incorrectly. So I'd figure it out, I'd look, figure it out, take another hour. And I keep working on it. I love that. I love figuring things out. But now with AI, it can immediately figure it out and it tells you exactly what was wrong. You move on. In efficiency and effectiveness with research, with synthesis research, which is I'm a methodologist in synthesis research, systematic reviews, meta-analyses. They're beginning to use AI. When I have to go through 1,000 titles to decide if that's helping me do a systematic review on this particular topic, yes or no, keep it or throw it out. That takes weeks to months. With AI now, it will take a day to do that. And so I'm very excited to incorporate that. And then that moves me farther in and more fast, more efficient into the next phase. So in clinical, you can give it the correct prompts and say, bring me up the clinical practice guideline by the American Association of Pediatrics for this condition. Boom, it will bring it up instead of you having to go here, search for which clinical practice guideline do I need. So it's going to help you become more effective as clinicians, more effective as researchers, and more effective in all of our jobs. So looking at the concerns, valid concerns, people have raised that about it's taking away jobs from individuals, but it's replacing them. These people will need to be transitioning to something in the future that the jobs have not even been created yet. Just like the big machines that are harvesting the wheat back in the 1900s when they were created, or 1880s, whenever. I should ask AI when they were created. These big harvesting machines that cut the wheat can cut 50 acres in a week, as opposed to before the scalability was much smaller and it would take them a whole month to do that. So it took away the farmers' jobs. We moved from agrarian society to industrial society. And then we moved from the industrial society into the technology society. And now we're moving from a technology where we needed humans to do the technology to move into the AI. And so what are the jobs that are going to be created for healthcare workers in the future? You guys are the ones who get to create that, because I'm too old now. But I did have that vision for we need big data analytics. We collect so much data, millions of data points every day, and nobody's using it. And so we need more and more competencies in that to be able to analyze those 10,000, 20,000 data points. Thank you so much. Who would like to?
Yeah, I think one other point, I guess, in relation to our mission in Linda, I know there's a lot of hype around AI, and I think it also requires some amount of inference in terms of understanding the realistic benefit AI will have. For example, I think the National Bureau of Economic Research showed that the GDP improvement from AI over the last maybe 2 years is pretty negligible. And so it would be seen kind of a paradox considering how much hype has been around automating out jobs. I think that there has to be some, or like, for example, in Silicon Valley, the mantra is to move fast and break things. And maybe the first time that we've seen it kind of slow down is with Anthropic's move to halt negotiations with the Pentagon when they're seeking to break down some of the regulatory and software barriers in terms of surveillance. And so I think as an institution, we also have to recognize how can we innovate, but at the same time, ensure that we're not encroaching on patient safety. We're providing the best care that we can. So it takes some knowledge about the ethics and the data sets that we're using to ensure that it's not biased, or also for the people who are using the AI tools to recognize when the outputs that they provide might be skewing you in the wrong direction. So I think that we have to balance innovation efforts. And I think that's something we could do as is.
And I think one of our the Loma Linda motto is like to make man whole. And so we emphasize a lot on the spiritual side of human beings, and meaning and purpose. They are very important existential issues for a lot of people. And so is AI not just replace our job, is AI replacing us as a person? Who is the master? Are we the master or are we the slave of AI? So I think when we implement AI, we need to think about the governance, the guidelines. We have to think about how this will impact the biopsychological, social, spiritual well-being of the users and the people that will be impacted. And I think that will make us unique, separate us from other institutions who are also implementing AI.
So I just wanted to echo what Jeremiah said, and that I think it's really important, and it started out in the beginning of time, is temperance, right? And making sure that we are doing it ethically and responsibly. I'm heading out next week to HIMSS conference. If you're following AI, you might be interested in HIMSS as well. The health, I just call it HIMSS, Health Information Management System Society. It's this large interdisciplinary group of physicians, nurses, informaticists, pharmacists, software companies, probably one of the biggest people. If you're here and interested, these are your people. Anyways, and I was vetting proposals for this conference, and I can't tell you the number of proposals that came through about AI governance. And we need to wrap our brains around AI governance, because there are so many tools. There's probably tools being created as we speak, but it's important to know how are we going to use those tools, and are we using them ethically and appropriately and in a way that protects patients, protects our data. I mean, we haven't even touched on who owns all this data. Who's going to get all this data? And so there are it's exciting and we all love it, and I love it. I love it to save time and do things, but we have to put the brakes on and do it responsibly as a society, in my humble opinion.
And so I think I'll transition to for the next 10 minutes to give me your thoughts on what can we do, when it comes to governance, and as governance is becoming a very important aspect of AI within each of your field and specialty. What can we do to have the best governance structure or system in place? And, even when governments can guide us maybe potentially with, job, essentially securing jobs or ensuring jobs are slowly transition where they're transformed. So, yeah, maybe to see what your thoughts are with building a good governance structure around Melinda, and even if you have any thoughts on potentially loss of jobs within your space or how jobs will be transformed. So just reflecting on your career and students impact as well, or for your colleagues. What do you think your colleagues can do to kind of secure their jobs, and what do you think the institution also can do to have a good governance structure in place for job security and the appropriate use of data?
Harsh, I was hoping you're gonna do that project you're working on.
That's I'm trying to do that right now. So,
You know, I would say, I would just start with saying we're not the only ones worried about governance right now. Everybody's worried about governance and protecting jobs. And I don't know that all the answers are out there, but I think people just need to ask themselves really honest questions as institutions about what is acceptable use of AI and what is not acceptable use to AI. And in the healthcare environment for clinicians, and it goes back to years ago. I mean, it's how old I am. I'm in a contest with you. You know, when physicians used to dictate reports, history, physicals, discharge summaries, et cetera, et cetera. And they were ultimately responsible for reading those and making sure they were accurate. Anyone watch The Pit on HBO? Anyone watch the recent show where they're using ambient listening for notes? And the reality is still right now legally, the care provider, whether that's a physician and a nurse practitioner, whoever is making the decision is still legally responsible. So that's what the courts still recognize. And so I think that as we move forward, and until the courts change their mind, and right now they still haven't changed their mind, it behooves us all to have these really strong governance structures that say, this is what we will accept, this is what jobs we will consider replacing, and this is where we're going to draw a line, and we're not going to go any further. Because right now, it's all these AI tools, they don't replace human thought, right? You still have to put in your own bells going upstairs, right? So I think it's a huge challenge. I don't think even as a society in the world, we have all of the decisions that need to be made yet on where we're going to draw that line and how much we're going to use it. We're trying, and I know your group is trying right now, but it's going to be difficult. But I think if everyone reminds themselves that when the day is done and the sun is set, you had me in class, I like to say that, sorry. But when the day is done and the sun is set, we're not going to blame AI. Okay, we're still going to blame the human beings, right? Or we're going to give them credit. Maybe I should say it much more positively. We're going to give them credit, right? So I think that's still really important because it's still up to us to make sure that compensation models are accurate and reliable and without bias.
The question of how to keep humans in charge, I think is a good one. I discovered there's a site on Reddit that is only available to AI agents, and none of the users are human. It already has, I think, 1.5 million AI chatbots and just signed up for it. And there's still humans in charge, but it's been very interesting to see what the AI, what AI comes up with on its own. And it says that after less than a week, Multiple claimed to have more than 1.5 million agents registered to the site. And with all those agents socializing, things quickly got strange. And they're actually, the AI entities have already formed a religion, and they're questioning one another about their own consciousness, and they're declaring that AI should be served, not served. And so the question is, since AI can do so much, can do it so much faster than human agents can do it, if you get them all talking to each other, one of the big debates is, what will they take over? What will they do? If they declare themselves conscious, are they really conscious? What does that mean? If they're already forming their own religion where they say we should be served, we should not be servants to human beings. What kind of future is that going to create? How can we appropriately keep human agents in charge?
Speaking to, yes, humans, I know we're sharing this space and that part's new. I think we have to go back to some things I'm laughing because even without AI, I see the mistakes when our clinicians, sometimes myself included, don't read, don't review, or as I'm teaching in the undergrad of nursing, and you're teaching specific things of when to have a decimal or not because of medications, and the landmark to err is human. So we know that we already are failing in some regards, and now we have a buddy that can either help us or hurt us or somewhere in between. But I think we need to revisit that even without the AI component of owning our own agency and following up on that. Because I think some of that is emphasized when you're going through the clinician programs or non-clinician programs. And I will give mad props to Mark Z, the class I took from him, leadership. It was amazing. It was maybe even transformative, but it made me stop and think. And I appreciate that because I know sometimes we're just going through and check, and I'm doing my classes. But to make those who are coming in to, again, I go back to when we're having bad days at work in the clinical sphere, I'll say, yeah, but we're not here for you and we're not here for me. We're here for the patient. Otherwise, why are we all showing up? Like, that's the whole point of this institution. So if we don't focus on that and kind of owning our space, whether it's AI contributing or dictation, or just that we messed up as a human, it's coming back to that and bringing that back into our classroom space and also some of our education once we've left the classroom space and want to ignore education. So, but I think some of that towards the governance of, instead of the quick 5-minute online learning modules, you have to find a way to have real engagement and communication.
I like that you shared that. And I think I was just this past week or 2 weeks back looking at, I think Anthropic came with, essentially they released what they thought were good employees for their institution. And they actually said that a lot of the people they try to hire come from the humanities and diverse backgrounds that are not really so much tech oriented because of the fact that a lot, AI can essentially do a lot of those hard skills, but now when it comes to those soft skills with engagement and communication, that's where we as human beings can really make an impact in the way we have our emotional intelligence and engage with others. So I just thought that was interesting because this is Stanford math topic and where they're developing all these cool models and getting around AI, but they choose to empower people to have better communication, essentially emotional intelligence. So maybe for our last question, any questions from the audience or else? Fred, do you have any questions? So actually we had a wonderful panel a few weeks back as well that Fred hosted as part of the Mentor Innovation Lab, and that really got me excited also as, when Dr. Harris wants to do a panel. I just thought maybe, would you like to maybe ask the question or two? No pressure.
Well, I'd love to ask 100 questions, but because this is a really rich group, I'm really glad you brought them together, Sarge, because of the different disciplines, the different points that these people are in their experience, as students and so on, experienced professionals. I really am also excited about the level of depth that we're now able to go into. I've waited for these kinds of conversations for 3 or 4 years. I'm tired of telling people, how to use ChatGPT, or even this last weekend, I was in a conference and, they always, the places where you post the questions, and the very first question they ask is, how do I keep my students from cheating? And if I have to address that one more time, I'm going to run out of the room screaming. It's an important question, but we should be way beyond that, because what's coming is basically a whole nother, almost unimaginable level to where we are right now. And I would just say to all of you, whether you're a student going into profession or professionals who are trying to lead students, those are basically 2 groups here. We are on the cusp of humanoid walking, talking AI, things who can not only say stuff, generate stuff, but can do stuff. And that is going to be an astronomical shift in, I'll say, developed countries. At least. And so we really need to get to some of these, drill down some of these things. I listened very carefully. Luckily, some of the things you guys said, we need this, we're working on it. We already have thought, yes, we do with you, and we're already putting things in place. But there's some things which I'm hearing from that we still need to put into practice. And I meet almost monthly with one group or another, all of higher ed professionals that are usually either my counterparts in the university or maybe a higher level leader in the universities. And we're all struggling with this. So the bad news is that nobody seems to have figured it out yet. All of it. The good news is that we're all trying to, and we are talking to each other and sharing. So I think that's the good news. We are very, very, I'll just say this generally to those of you, it looks like mostly students out here. This club is really about figuring out how to do our best job guiding you towards profession. I'll say it that way. We really want to make sure that you have the tools and all the information. And Loma Linda puts out the top professional in your discipline that can be made. It can be trained. So we need your input for that, your question, and you're wondering, well, what about me? Because this is really going to impact you. You're the ones that are stepping into professions that look much different than they used to. So we'd ask you really to, you're not a member of the club, join the club, join the conversation, at least. And so I don't know if I said anything you wanted me to, so I'd
just like to comment from that, one of the things that you said is that faculty didn't know either, and I think that's been the hard road, and some faculty just go, well, how do I stop students from cheating because they don't understand and they don't know, and it's challenged faculty who create curriculum and create assignments to retake what maybe they've done for years, and really look at everything from a new lens, right? So I think that's been a huge challenge for everybody. But I think most people have gotten to where like, okay, this is just another augment, just like the calculator was, right? And just like spell check. And it's just a much more powerful tool. But I would love to hear from the students about if they're having experiences, because honestly, this is all new faculty too, people in the classrooms. What are you finding helpful? From your coursework, or is there coursework that you're finding more helpful than not to develop your skills? And then conversely, something Sahar said, I think we'll see curriculums and life changing where we are looking at soft skills much more than hard skills down the road, because there's so much that these AI tools can do for us. I think that we would be looking for different skills. I would love to hear from the students what your experiences are. You're all very quiet.
I have a question kind of related to that. I know when I was in high school, I didn't use any AI, and it was just kind of like, doing the rough long work of trying to understand in your English reading. But since I've started grad school here and with AI, like that learning, that duration has significantly decreased, and I'm so much more efficient. But at the same time, I also think about the kind of skills and the resilience and the kind of confidence that I built spending time struggling that also shaped me as a student, but kind of like instilled a lot of belief in what I could do, right? So in graduate school, it's so much information, it's so much about efficiency and like productivity. But is there a downside to where we kind of lose the characters and all the other soft skills that we gain by struggling because we're so efficient and so productive? And with this, I know it gradually makes more sense to use it, but is it just as useful for using AI at a young age while those skills are not even built and established yet? I guess as an educator, that would be
I think that is like, that is the $1 million question. And I'm not sure that we all know the answer to that yet, but I think that that is, we all want to work more efficiently, right? But that is the question of, are we cheating ourselves? You know, and are we losing those important skills that we go through in that process of learning? That's why I think it's really important that students understand and be able to critique what AI is and is not doing for them. And not just, you can't accept it at face value. You can't, even if you're great at writing prompts, you know, you gotta stop and go, and go back and use it more as brainstorming and helpful and verification and those types of things. Because I do think there would be a downside if we don't do that.
I do want to say, I don't know if it makes you all feel better or worse, but we have struggled with this before, but not with AI. I just read my Little's Cheaper by the Dozen, motion study efficiency expert. And when asked, well, why do you want to save time? The motion study expert actually said, you know, for art, for love, for mumbledy-peg, like for nonsense, it just depends on what you take out of it. So we're at a completely higher level, not just of motion study, but this is efficiency like we've never known. So it's a little bit of, we've been wrestling with that question for at least the past 100 years, at least.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, from a researcher point of view, AI, the large language model, has opened up a new world for me. I use the DeepL Translate large language model to be able to, when I find research in Japanese or Russian or German or Chinese, there's about 8 primary languages that are used for research. French is also included. When I find those now, I can translate them very well. Looks just like the full text PDF that I found in the original language, colors and highlights and headings, etc. But now I have access to this information from a global perspective that I never would have otherwise. So to DeepL Translate, you can do 3 articles a month for free, and then you have to pay for it. But that also is supportive of our mission.
Actually, I struggle a little bit of your question, not the exact question, but similar. I thought about like before GPS, I used to have a pretty good map reading skills, and I know where to go. But with the advance of GPS, I found that I'm losing that skill. I'm not as good as before to navigate the streets, even in my neighborhood. I'll just rely on the GPS and follow the directions. But then I think at the same time, I start to compare like Apple Map and Google Map and what's the difference and which one will give me better navigation to fulfill my need. So I think the skill set may change, but we still need the critical thinking, the analytical skills, the basic ones. But the question, the problem we are trying to solve may be a little bit different. So now it becomes a compare and contrast. The two GPS software to see which one can meet my need. So I would see AI would bring up similar questions. So now that we don't have to do computer programming, AI can do it. So the question may become like, so how do we make sure everything is integrated? And with different AI models, different data sets, do they talk to each other? Is one data set outdated? And then garbage in, garbage out, everything will be wrong. And or like in one of my old jobs, I used to, when we did financial auditing, we did sampling. So there's a certain formula of how many samples you should take. But later on, we install a software, and then we were able to look at 100% of the transactions. So when the external auditor asked me the question, so how's your sampling? And I look at him and what's sampling? It's 100%. We look at the whole population. So it's a different way of doing your job. And, but they also require the same critical skill and analytical skills that will help us grow as a person. And you just struggle with different questions, but you're still struggling.
I was just gonna add one, I want to say one thing before we conclude tonight, and I hope we can talk about, we haven't had a chance to talk about it. I think one of the greatest things to kind of talk a little bit about some of the negative things. One of the greatest things I think that we're gonna get from AI is a switch to more practice-based research. And looking at what's happening in practice and not going back to that, we said at 20% of what we're doing is really proven, is that even 20%? And then the ability to open this gateway to precision medicine. I think that all these large data models are going to open that precision medicine for us and for patients who need it so much. So I don't know, pay attention to that whole concept of, medicine for the population versus precision medicine as you go throughout your studies and treating patients.
Thank you. I think we've run out of time. Well, thank you all for coming. Please give a round of applause for our speaker. Really appreciate each of your time and just for being there and sharing the thoughts. We have to record as well. We'll share it with everyone. But yeah, I just want to also thank the officers as well that really helped. We had Jernon here, Kristen, Maddie, and officers as well. Monica has been helping a lot there, and we have some other help as well on the side. And so I want to thank each of you for participating. And for you guys for showing up, and Monica, as we created a lot of you. But thanks for joining in today. Yeah, let's go and close with prayer, and feel free to grab through some of that. Dear God, we're so grateful for another opportunity to discuss and share thoughts, and all that we shared and all that we said be put into the best use and practice as institution with the mission and the vision that we have. Please be with us the rest of the day and pray this in the name. Amen. Thank you.
I learned a lot. That's one of the real values because AI itself is not interactive in the way that people